because they own the suffering, they own the problems. Then now we refuge for Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We say, oh, Buddha has power, Dharma has power, Sangha is powerful. Firstly, we not just text said, Buddha said. Therefore, Buddha said Buddha has the ability to protect for us any sufferings. Not like that. We have to check the quality. Okay. Sorry. This is a software. Right? Sorry for allergies. That in the Tadan, Tankajan, and touch up to the Sanji, but it's also Sanji Chukin something.
So, what we take refuge in is Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. They are the three objects of refuge.
And then Sanji said, that chub Tambabo. And he chose the chub, again, said chapter of Daro.
So, these three objects of refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The Buddha is the founder of the refuge. The Dharma is the actual refuge, and Sangha, is the helper, for achieving the refuge.
And Trada, and Chedang, Sambat refuge ching it. That's all I need that Jab with the Mares, Jabiabo the Mares long as well.
So when we say we take refuge in something, that means like we're asking for protection from that thing, right? And so many people take refuge in many different things. They take refuge in the inanimate objects like the mountains, the rocks, the trees, the bridges, and so forth. So those are not the actual refuge that we're talking about here. They cannot protect us from the sufferings. So by taking refuge in these things, in the inanimate objects or like worldly gods and so forth, they can relieve you from some kind of sufferings in this life, but they will not be able to help you to be free from the sufferings of the lower realms in the future life, or of course, and then no need to talk about the sufferings of the entire cycle existence. No way they can help us with that. And so here, when we say taking refuge, we take refuge at the very least, to be free, to be protected from the sufferings of the lower realms, and if possible, then from the sufferings of the cycle existence as well.
What in by that? And running core and so do all and Jipale, draw so much minor and so they throw in the bath and never is.
So the object of refuge in whom we take refuge has to have the potential, to protect us, from those sufferings. And somebody who can protect us from those sufferings has to be free from those sufferings. So somebody who is within that suffering, within that fear, will not be able to protect us from those fear or suffering.
Today that any Nipa Young data, Sanji controls, Sanji Jumden data, Mother Namji, Kazachino, Sanji Jumden, they said him, but was.
So these objects of refuge in whom we take refuge should have that power, and the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the three objects of refuge, they have the power to protect us from these sufferings. So like the Buddha is the object of one of the objects of refuge, has the power to protect us from sufferings. Because he himself is free from all the sufferings, all the fears, and whether he has the power to protect us or not, we can check just by looking at his speech. So, and then the Dharmakirti, in his text known as the Compendium of Valid Cognition, in that he said, Buddha is a valid person. And so others are not valid. Buddha is a valid person. So what does it mean by Buddha and a valid person to the Buddha? And so somebody who became a valid person, So it doesn't. So that shows we became a valid person. The word became shows that he wasn't valid from the beginning. He later became a valid person.
그래서 셈에 깨워 많이 지다 셈에 깨워야 전로가 다야 창로가 여러 차 걔네 도로 왔어.
And so, in this case, like a fully enlightened person, right? So somebody who was not enlightened before can become enlightened, just like that. Somebody who was not a valid person from the beginning, later, through practices and so forth, can become a valid person.
나 단디는 주는 바와 아마 뭐보이지. 또 바와마야 계속 말해 왔어. 당번 주에 깨운지는 바와마 말해 왔어.
So among you, there are many of you who are parents, right? So you became parent, right? You were not parent from the beginning. You became parent after you give birth to a child.
아니 조선은 다 doctor 뭐보이지래서 PhD까지.
Same with other status like a doctor and so forth, right?
당번 깨우는 것도 처음 왔어.
So from the time when you were born, you're not doctor, right? So you became doctor later.
대나시가 산지 좀 된 데서 해야 돼. 당번 깨우는 산지세 고점에 저 차야 말아. 그 개득을 나도 아니 냠len 쳐발할 때는 재밌게 오서도 차서 말했어.
So same like that, with Buddha Shakyamuni, he was a valid person from the beginning, and later he became a valid person through practicing, meditating and so forth, and he became a valid person later.
봐. 재밌게 오서야 돼. 아니 공기 강송샤베가 다 송데 제마이나 다 재밌게 오서 봐.
So what do we mean by a valid person? So here, whether he's a valid person or not depends on his speech. So whatever he said, if that is a valid, then a person who said those valid things, becomes a valid person.
봐. 그냥 안도티 안도 담을 뭐 가다 차샤다 차마차다 mambo여 봐. 안도 창조 시작 미디 창조 세 초모자데 야무나 디가 라베 깨자 야무나 지 지셔베 데 야무나 미디가 라브자 야무나 미디가 지가로 딱 깨제 시당 될는 것도 차샤 여러 번.
And so there are many people in this world who we can rely on, right? Like the authors. So how do we know if this is a reliable writer? How can we believe whether what he said, is true or not? Depends, what he has written, right? So what he has written, if that makes sense, then we can say that what he said is true.
It's correct. Are you guys follow that? He said such person is very scholar. He wrote such books, very wonderful, because the quality of the person is not the person's side.
So whether the person is qualified or not, it's not from the side of the person, it's from the side of person's qualifications, right?
And another middo only midig shaje, Geshe Shawa Shetan Tenley, that middo.
And same with the negative side. So if the person was bad or not, it depends on how he does, how he speaks, and so forth. So from the way he speaks, from the way he do things, then people say, oh, he's a person.
Right? 어떤 데 당한도 산지 좀 된 데서 해야지 재미 쪼인 바 말아와인 바데 다 공부 송라 되는 것도 고고 그래서.
And so Buddha Shakyamuni, being a valid person, being an infallible person, can be recognized by listening to his speeches.
봐. 다들 나도 다 간줄 때는 차상 따오라. 나는 전 따투자 말아와. 만주 가디나 하고 말아와. 제가 봤어.
So then we will go through all his speech, right? All the teachings that he gave, like the translated teachings of the Buddha, and then the translated commentaries, all these teachings that he has given. You have to go through all those teachings to understand that he is a valid person, and there's no way we can go through all of those texts, right?
어다티 마도나 당 안돌아야 즉. 아니 산지 좀 된 데가 자. 아니 사제 단지 동아와래 해서 다들라 그래서 봐.
So, but there are these teachings, the Buddha, that is concise, right, and easy to understand, and you can understand through that that his speech, is valid. And so, so just by this, reading these verses that he mentioned about things, how things are all, this is how all the component things are impermanent.
단 되지라나 아니 지금 대단 저도 잘 mambo 지금 네발라 때네 루발라 때네 지금 나도 샤와시에 유배가 주간 되지더라고. 네 셰더라고.
So compounded phenomena, right? Compounded phenomena here is a phenomena or thing that is made of many things combined together, right? You combine many things together, and then that becomes something for it to function in certain ways, right? So that that thing which came into existence by depending on many parts and particles, and so that thing is called compounded phenomena. So every compounded phenomena is impermanent. So what would you say if someone were to ask you, is every compounded phenomena impermanent? What do you say? Is all compounded phenomena impermanent?
The book there, I don't know, maybe 20 years.
So this book, this is here you can see it's torn, right? Let's say it's not torn. So then, but can you see it's being impermanent? It's a bit difficult to see that it's disintegrating, right? Disintegrating or perishing. Do you see that nature in this book? Of course, if you see it's torn, then you can see the difference. That's a gross impermanence, right? So that disintegration, like the moment by moment, is being disintegrated, right? Every second, every split second is disintegrating. That part is difficult to see, right? And also when we talk about human beings, from the second moment of the person's birth, the person's old. He's aging. Right? From the second moment, the first moment is born, and then second moment is older already. He's aging, getting old. So that's how we start, from the second moment of our birth, we start to age, right? And then usually we call old only when we're like 60, 70, 80 years old, right? We didn't become 80 years old just like that, right? We became gradually, through the passings of many years, many months, many days, many hours, minutes, seconds, split seconds, like that, right? So eventually you become like that. You didn't become old just like that, right? So, but we don't see that, right? We don't see that, the change happening in our life, moment by moment. So same with the change that happens in the colors of the flowers or leaves, right? So that change didn't happen just like that, right? It happened gradually, but we don't see it. Today we see it green, tomorrow it's already orange. So we say, oh, it became orange just like that. But no, it had all this process, right? Which took place, and it became gradually, into that different color. And so, it's easy to see the gross impermanence, right? In gross impermanence, you can see. The subtle impermanence, is hard to see.
The kanji manje, nanzo thoro madana, kanji jena jena de shushawaji, jena jena de shushawaji na, ta jena jena de jingdo resro, then the matabares.
And so anything that happened or that come into existence by depending on cause and condition also disintegrates, by depending on cause and conditions.
And
that's what Buddha said. So all the compounded phenomena are impermanent. So whether that's true or not, we can check it ourselves. Is it really true with the reality?
So
if it is real, if it's true, then you can say Buddha's speech about the compounded phenomena being impermanent is true and valid, right? And then he said every contaminated phenomena, every contaminated phenomena are in the nature of suffering. So suffering and in the nature of suffering. So So what do we mean by contaminated phenomena here again, right? So contaminated phenomena is a phenomena that came into existence by depending on karma and delusion. So anything that is created by karma and delusion, is contaminated phenomena.
근데 다 나랑 소지제 사체 년에지 봉보대 아니 다 동화가 나je 동화가 그래서 나버렸어.
And so we can think about our one aggregate, right? So our aggregate, is contaminated because it is produced by karma and delusion. So it's because then, therefore, it is therefore it is in either suffering or in the nature of suffering.
그래서 다 나도 사진을 봉보대 동화가 렌도도 레면도 가디나 참으라고 하냐 양도 왔어.
And so whether our body, that we have is contaminated or not, can see, by how we are going through some kind of troubles all the time.
어떻게 다때 렌도도 뭐도 따고 그래서 가디나 전소 만소 소보대 얘네 얘 사원의 소리다 간지 동화가 나지 자대 그래서.
And so whether that's true or not, we can check. If we don't check, we will not find it out. But if we check, we will see that the moment we have this body, we always get some kind of problems.
배차샤와나 다 나라 소지랑 아주 강바 모랑아도 지금 보인다. 너소양 달래 잡으면서 조용하러 와서 소주 레기다. 소중하러 와서.
And also same thing with other properties like the house, car, our clothes, and all these belongings that we have. We got that, because we created karma. And then karma was created by delusion, right? Motivated by delusion, we create karma. As a result of karma, then we get these things now. And those are all also in the nature of suffering, because of being contaminated, right?
근데 다가 못하여서 다 누가 가와요. 다 대응은 말은 와요. 저도 쟁으러 왔어. 나 강바가 누가 말은 가 야보러 왔어. 강바여라서 나 쟁으러 왔어.
But we don't think that way, right? We don't think having house is a suffering, having car is a suffering, right?
So why way to live without house? How can I go without car, right? But somebody's car is 이나야 딱 가서 이때 그 대학이 자식이를 해서 뭐야지를 했어요. 임바이나야 딱고 예와 탐정가서까지 동안 고수사래서 봐.
So although it brings a lot of benefits, but it's also still has suffering, right? The fact that there is a suffering that's brought by that because of having that, because you have the car, you have the suffering of having the car, getting the car breaking down, and having to pay for the car and so forth. All this suffering comes with the car, right? Even though there is some benefits of having the car.
그럼 미쳐라야 강바주나 강바되게 제주고 누가 용거를 생각도 라비어서 상대기 주나.
So whatever amount of the properties you have, that much of suffering you will have.
Yeah. Right? Then we have to check. I have a house. If I have suffering or not. Yes, you have suffering. Somebody you have place to live, comfortable. You don't need to worry. But other hand, you have to always worry. Broken here someplace, here broken someplace, or scores come to make the hole there, water doesn't go to the right place, you become cracked, for the gas, electricity, always half suffering, half little benefit. Then, like that, everything. There is a kanji ledan nyumor shushoeza, ta dunga rangeres,
And so because it is produced by karma and delusion, therefore it's within the nature of suffering.
아니, 가로. 늦었다 좀 못하고 주. 아니, 주도 동시 담아. 주 땅안도 지 늦에다 남아지 주 간에 제 임바이나야. 밭에다 와이나. 나도 주 가로. 문이 밭에다 저 와이나. 다 지가래. 다 랑가 문에 마트 바시. 나도 나와나지 다 마트 바지 아니야. 해서로.
And so it says all the component phenomena are impermanent, all the contaminated are within the nature of suffering, and all the phenomena are empty and selflessness. And when we talk about empty again, and what we're talking about here is not just saying it's non-existent or nothingness, right? It's talking about not existing in a way they appear to us, right? And not existing from their own side without depending on cause and conditions.
근데 임바인사 전세 대달라 때네 다 냥을랜 데비 공부 도바치고 그래 해서노. 냥을랜 데비 셔와고.
And then through understanding that, only when it achieves the liberation, that is when really real peace is. So when you have abandoned all the delusions and all the karmas, and you achieve the liberation, then that is when the real peace is. So this is the nirvana, is the peace. So just by seeing those 4 lines, of the teaching that Buddha gave, and checking on that whether it's true or not, then from that we can understand what Buddha said is true or not. So from that, then we can see whether the Buddha is a valid person or not. And so whether the person is a liar or not, whether the person is honest or not, depends on what he has spoken, right? So if he has spoken the false words, then we say, oh, he's a liar. If he has spoken the truth words, then we say he's honest, is truth, right? So he has given us the freedom, to check, whether what he said is true or not. He says, this is what I experienced, and that's how things are. But whether it's true or not, you can check it yourself. You don't have to believe just because I said it. And so this is, showing how we can achieve a happiness in the future lives. And so it is showing the method to bring happiness, comfortable life in the future. And so what we can do to have a good life in the future. And it is not only this life that we had. So we had so many previous lives, countless previous lives. There's no beginning, to our previous lives. So when it started, we don't know, but there's always previous life of previous life, right? So one life, there was always previous life of that life. And so during all this time, we have always been under some kind of sufferings all the time. So from the moment you take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, then that's when you really start, practicing Buddhism, Buddha's teaching. And so that is the gateway, of Buddha's teaching. And so entering into Buddha's teaching. So and so when you take refuge in the Buddha, that's when you believe in Buddha, right? So so only when you start to believe in Buddha, then you will follow his teachings. That's when you really start, to follow his teachings, and that's what we say, the gateway, of the teachings of the Buddha. So before you can, engage, or enter into that, into that holy gateway of the Buddhism, you have to know what is the Buddha, what is Dharma or Sangha, what are their qualifications, good qualities for which you can rely on them or trust in them. And so that's the holy gateway, for entering into the teachings of the Buddha, and then so whether one is going to find real happiness or not, depends how we follow the karma, right? How we follow the actions. If we follow good actions, then we'll have a good result, happiness. If we follow the bad actions, then we'll have a bad result, the sufferings, right? So having faith in the law of cause and effect, is the root, of the happiness in the future lives.
다들 가는데 간도 때 깔카올래라고 고차 깔카올로 와서 얘나야 다들 간도 빼다 아니 두시 라와이나 어때 펜도로 와서.
So it is, the way it is explained, might find it a little difficult to understand, but as it is explained with the examples and all these things, then it becomes easier for us to understand how taking refuge and how having faith in the law of cause and effect brings us happiness.
데려다 빼차샤가는 간도 칼라드 사회망도 시기여러 보다 간도 칼라드 간도 사회망도 시기여러 봐서 배나 다들 잠도서는 보시러 칼라드 사회망 시와지 다 칼라드 사와이나 조고 자고 요한테 이치와이나 아는 간도 칼라드 사거러 봐서.
And so, for example, like we know the food is to be eaten, right? And if we believe that if we eat the food, we will fill our stomach, right? We'll be, full, and we'll be, happy and so forth. So if we believe that, then we'll eat the food, right? So if you don't believe that that's going to bring that benefit, make you, healthier, stronger, and so forth. If you don't believe that, then you will not eat it, right? So that we understand, we see that, and we believe that, right? And therefore, we eat whenever we feel hungry. So we believe that if we drive too fast, then we'll be given a ticket, right? We believe that, right? And therefore we will be very conscientious.
Right?
Because we believe in those kind of actions, and therefore, we are very conscientious about not breaking those laws, right?
Right? And also you go to the downtown, Boston. Very easy to get ticket. Everybody have the what you call
Believe,
right? Even I have the belief. I got also one ticket in Boston. just 10 minutes. They say you can live 20 minutes. I just 10 minutes they can the ticket. Therefore everybody has what believe or everybody know. Everybody know, right? Therefore we always very careful. That we got ticket is punishment, right? Punishment. That we don't want the punishment. Therefore we looking for the cause of the punishment. Always very careful with that. Or thinking about that, kanji, mandu kanji jembana susu te ichi nyewa ina. Any that they my own tapshango. That you go to the tangaro.
So if we, believe that we're going to get ticket by doing that, then we'll try all the means to not do that, right?
Right? Because we're very careful for the, park our car or we usually very careful driving. It's not we very follow the role or we very check or the caring for others. We don't want trouble for us. Therefore we always very careful, right? We know the punishment come to me, not go others. Therefore we always very careful. If you understand? It's very careful. Right? Now we talk about cause and effect. So
in Buddhism, we always talk about karma, right? And the results. So whatever good result or bad result, it depends on the kind of karma. So all the happiness comes from a good action, a good karma.
And
all the sufferings, all the undesirable things come from bad karma, bad actions. Whether that's true or not, we should check ourselves.
And the lady said the shaggy and the kalikawadang and the hako kalikawa.
So again, there are different level of karma. There's some are very difficult to understand. More very difficult, for ordinary people like ourselves.
And so let the Sasha and any can train Samala and drive the
So if we have created the karma, then when that karma meets with the condition, and it ripens in a form of result.
Penang also whole food na zoya kita ndrit zulaya. Kangala nyugu chegi niba yor was. Ko chena te mate ramato.
So all the the seeds or the grains that is sold in Whole Foods has the potential to grow, right? To grow into crops, but whether they will grow into crops or not depends on whether they meet with the conditions or not.
Oh, tende idada nanzu jelaya chi. Gevele sayori dipele sayori ta yaboyole sayori dushayon lemo sa sayori ta ko chena te mate ader was.
So we have created so many different kind of karmas, right? So the karmas we have created is all in the in our consciousness. The imprint of those karma are stored in our consciousness, and whenever those imprints of the karma meets with the right condition, then they will ripen in the form of the result.
Oh, tende ibada ta kanji manje, and rev dunga yawa jet so kardana, so mgewa chedan rev ki shawa shawa de res lakweles wa.
And so the cause of the suffering, is the non-virtuous action. So any kind of 10 non-virtuous actions is the cause of the result, cause of the sufferings.
And then mgewa chamba ha ko ne te ta shawa moju ba de te wan mando wati gewa ches tegen revala and devasa yongores.
So knowing about the 10 non-virtuous actions and not engaging in them, so avoiding to engage in them, abstaining from engaging in the 10 non-virtuous action, there is the 10 virtuous actions.
Tati yoda sawa to the chu sawa to the any mari necha shedan timu to the was.
And these actions, again, they depend on the delusions, right? So all these karmas, the actions, like especially the 10 non-virtuous actions, depends on the motivation, the delusions like attachment, anger, ignorance, jealousy, and so forth. So most of us, ordinary people like ourselves, we don't know that these non-virtuous actions are based on those kind of motivations like the delusions.
And global women said that Mamboji Young to culture or something,
So nowadays they have so many meetings held, to discuss about how to resolve, the global warming problems, and then how to protect the environment and so forth. Right? So all these problems, the global warming problems, the environmental problems, where are they based on? So it's based on our delusions, right? So environmental damage, is caused by people, right? And what make the people to cause that? Unknowingly, right? They created these actions, producing all these things, which brings all these chemicals, hazardous chemicals, and all these things that destroys the environment, and that is created because we want to have such and such things, because of our attachment or desire or lack of contentment. We want to have all these more and more things, and the more we produce these things, more the damage.
Tinalangado Pega, Lamachi, Cotin around the and the Kunduki said, when it's not made a common church make share total matters. And the Kruger and the Travati and the tongue of Sawa Cordon, Manzu means Sem Mandava, Sem Donga want the Shoni, and also that Kula Nature Chamada, and the global woman going to say, could love me. And Mikanga wanted to tell Koyandus. Tell some of the Kanga Hans, I go to this chumores.
And so I don't know if you're aware or if you have heard about this meeting, a huge meeting held in China about global warming problem and the environmental problem, and then all these different kinds of doctorates or scientists, and many scholars, they gather together and to discuss about the solution, of that. And everybody was given like 10 or 15 minutes of time to speak about their opinion, of what brought it, and what kind of solutions can they bring, to overcome this problem. And among them, there was this one monk, a Tibetan monk, who had an opportunity to go there and speak about it. And then he spoke about all this, how this was caused by our one delusions, incontentment, desire, attachment, and so forth. And it made a lot of sense to so many people. They all listened to him for a long time.
아니 슈마 콘주 단 조등요 콜라 치치케시야 도당을 때렸어.
And so, they were so interested to hear more and more about him, about the things from him. Usually other people have only 10, 15 minutes, but they gave him 1 hour, 1 full hour to talk about that.
Because he doesn't talk the teaching, he doesn't talk the Buddhism, but he used the Buddhism knowledge for the other way. 그리고 남백이 다 그리고 싸워야 리파데 아니 바카고 있는 거 나와인다. 다른 자대로 왔어.
So when he used the Buddhist ideas, logics, to explain about those problems, and it made a lot of sense, to all these people.
그래서 다 인사를 인사말 다 가서 상담 다 왔어. 다 가정 문에 가서 밀은 동음기 동음 쳇다네. 가서 제 마다네. 다 대상 지금으로 마디 오게 그러고.
So it's true or not, you can see, just as easily by how so much the desires and incontentment that we have towards all the things that we want to have.
어떻게든 남백의 추대 야보지로 세나 남주 소속 밑에 째당 밀게지 세당 아니 지금 세당 바로 다 깨워시면 말면 다 세널 펜독심 보시라 이러죠.
And so so if you can understand about these different logics, that makes sense. Right? It's really true that how these delusions bring about all these different kind of actions to be created, and these actions bring all these sufferings and so forth. And you can relate that to our day-to-day life problems, and that will really make sense to us.
어디지 드네다 다 로저 드네다 당한도들 만도 드네다 다 땜발아 주고 뭐 잠도레스 아니 잠도 매와나 산지까지 산지 추기들 안에 다 이체 매와 있나 아니 가서 다 남에게 땜발아 주고 말해 송거죠.
And so, like you said in this teaching here, the holy gateway of entering the teaching is the Buddha, is taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So if we haven't taken refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, then we haven't entered the Buddha's teachings. We haven't started to practice Buddhism.
아니 델라 잠도 언니 이체 야보요나 아니 되니 아니 렌 따라 델레던 저와 렌들라 이체 그때와 제게 해서.
And then the second one is developing faith in the law of cause and effect, the root of all the health and happinesses.
뭐지? 다들만 가서 때들 록샤는 뭐 왜? 사실 이 받은 것도 받아. 예 갈아셔야 된다고 하니 이세 디칸 발록션 세드면
What is?
되는데.
Kobodo.
되면 니바 예 갈아셔야 된다. 다 샤이무선 다 디칸 봐.
So let's read together this the outline 77, 177, and 178. Right? Taking refuge, the holy gateway for entering the teachings. You can read together. This has 5 sections. The cause on which one's taking refuge depends. What object to take refuge in, the criteria for having taken refuge sufficiently, the benefits of taking refuge, advice after one has taken refuge. The cause on which one's taking refuge depends. Our proper taking of refuge depends on whether we, within our mind stream, the proper causes for taking refuge. These causes are discussed in Losang Chogi Gyatsen's melodious laughter of Losang, answers in cautions and Western truism of all, which says, the true nature of taking refuge because one is most afraid and because one knows the 3 jewels are able to protect, that is what you meant, omniscient one. In other words, we need both causes, personal fears of samsara and the lower realms, and the belief that if we are able to put in our trust in them, the 3 jewels will have the ability to protect us from these terrors. If we do not have both these causes, we will not take refuge purely. If we do not fear suffering, we will not think of seeking a refuge. If we do not believe in the object of refuge, we will not remember our reliance on it as refuge. As we recall, but only in words, because our heart will not be in the act of entrusting ourselves to that refuge. Each of the 3 scopes contains its own versions of the first taking refuge. For the small scope, it is fear of going to the lower realms ourselves. For the medium score, fear of samsara. For the great score, such love and compassion that we cannot bear sufferings in samsara. This means that the cause for taking refuge is fear of the lower realms.
Okay? You understand? Okay. 근데 이제 다 담보들 사실 다 잠으로서 이치셔. 아니 사실은 다 저 가려야 되는 잡선 놓고 그래. 스타트라 그래서 저 가려야 되는 잡선 놓고 그래서.
And so cause on which one's taking refuge depends.
그렇죠? 배나 저 가려서나 배나 가로. 먼저 저 가려야 되는 클래스 하고는 좀 leen 가자.
Causes on which one takes which one's taking refuge depends, right? So you can also apply this to other things like cause on which one's eating food depends.
What cause?
What causes us to eat food, right? In other words, hunger.
That's correct. That's correct, right? 가려서나 그거 맞는 것도 가려서 대로 제가 말아.
So that's one of the cause, right? What is the other cause? Huh?
No.
Attachment.
I believe the eating will make the hunger go away.
That's right. So
That's
those
good.
two, right?
Okay? This we make some example and more easy to understand also hard to difficult, right? 그러니까 먼저 저것도 하다 가라사나 아니 저거 약을 다 가로 다 잡아시와 이친이가 요한다 먼저 가라사 죽어로 봐.
So the fear of the hunger, right? The fear of the hunger, or not liking the hunger. In other words, if you don't like to hear the word fear, you can say not liking the hunger, because you don't like the hunger, the suffering of hunger. Therefore, you look for food, right? And then also you believe that the food has the potential to, get rid of the hunger or fill your stomach, and that's why you eat the food.
다때가도 냠냠이래. 냠냠도 공부하러 왔어.
So we can understand that easily, right? Because we know ourselves.
그러 다저 가려야 되는 잡은도 그래서 다때 당보들이 다저 가려야 되는 잡은도 그래서나 알레 나 자동 달라면 당보들이 아니 강사들 제가 점도 넘바 염에서도 강사들 제가 점 가로 잡선도 점도 제여면을 하래 그래서.
So cause on which one's taking refuge depends, right? So whether one has taken refuge or not depends on whether one has these causes or not, right? So if you don't have these causes, then you will not be taking refuge, right? So you have to have the cause for taking refuge, to take the refuge.
대치 다 당보지 이바데 안에 되게 다 제대로 나는 예 가려야 되는 점으로 다 짜준으로 예 간다지 레스는 가서 직통 그래서.
So that's the first category, right? The five sections, the first section of this category. Second one is what object to take refuge. So if we can take refuge, if we have to take refuge, then what are the objects that we can take refuge in?
안에다가 이제 점 하나로 가지 잡자고 와서.
So you have to take refuge in an object that is unmistaken.
아니 델레 잡자와는 남도 로파 파레와 잡아대 소소라대 뒤쪽에 니바이를 잡는 거 그래서.
So the unmistaken object, the object that really has the potential to protect us. If we do that, then there is a possibility that we will be protected from these sufferings.
So 어떻게 되니까 다 somebody 제대로 잡아서 돼. 다 간이라고 지나 그 잡는 걸 납고요. 그래서.
And then the third one is the criteria for taking refuge sufficiently, right? So what level of taking refuge? In other words, like the measure of having taken refuge. So when you do such and such thing, then that's really called taking refuge, right? If you don't do that, then it's not called taking refuge. If you do that, then it's called taking refuge. That's what it means, right? Third one.
어떻게 다 시와데 든리 잡수송을 아니 배로 가래요. 그래서.
And the fourth section, is benefits of taking refuge, right? So if you take refuge, then what are the benefits of taking refuge in those objects of refuge?
어떻게 다 somebody 시와데 아니 잡수 랍자다. 랍자로 가래. 소가로 가래요. 그래서.
And so once you then you understand then you also have the advices after one had taken refuge, right? Or precepts that one has to keep after taking refuge in the three jewels.
어디를 답변은 안 돌아. 그냥 알아서 가리나 네방디 샤고 그래서 소소라 네ben디. 그렇죠?
And so one has to see oneself, so you might have heard about these the 6 recognitions, right? So recognition of oneself as as a patient, a sick person.
아니 다 산지라 아니 메메디 제거로 왔어.
And then the recognition of Buddha as a doctor,
아니 추라 아니 메메디 제거로 왔어.
the Dharma as a medicine.
와 아니 가로.
And
겐딜라다 가려 잡들 다도 간지 내용도 시작으로 왔어.
then the Sangha as nurse.
덴리가 아니 멤버지 매지 내용 섬가 요한다 소수 매드 소니 다 내래 트래블 되시 이세로 와서 시작을 했어.
And so once you have all these three together, the doctor, the medicine, the nurse, then there is then you have the next recognition, thinking that if I have all those and if I follow them, then I will be cured from the diseases. So that kind of recognition.
덴리가 아니 가서 산지기 가서 추마 손으로 공다 멤버 손으로 가서 추마 랍죠. 아니 겐디 강라야 되니 추게 줘야 돼. 해서 가지. 추게 줘야 돼. 간지 다 가서 라 고대워지나 단단하고 가게 오지나 다또 먹이지 봉 좀 나고 랍잖아. 그래서 근데 추게 정문에도 말다 가서 냠내지에 요약이 추게 줘고 다 진짜 바로 속단으로 와.
And so the Buddha is like the doctor. So just like the doctor knows about the diseases, and he can tell you what kind of disease you have, and by taking what kind of medicine you will be cured from that disease. He knows that, right? So just like that, Buddha knows what are the sufferings, what are the causes of sufferings, and he explains how to abandon them and so forth. So by following that, you can be cured from or you can be freed from all these sufferings. And so just like the doctor tells you what medicine to take, so it is the medicine that actually relieves you from the disease, right? Just like that, Buddha gives the teaching, and it is that teaching that actually relieves you. Buddha is only telling you what to do, but what really relieves you from the suffering is following his teaching. So just like when you take the medicine, then you will be cured from the disease. So here. Of course, the real Dharma, we talk about generally, is the true, path and true cessation. So those are the actual Dharma that frees us from the sufferings of the entire cycle. But here, we mainly want to be free from the sufferings of the lower realm. So for that, if you abandon the 10 virtuous action, then that will free you from all these sufferings, right? From the sufferings of the lower realm, and therefore you can say that abandoning or the morality of abandoning the 10 virtuous action is the Dharma here.
어디 빼셔서나 아니 멤버 간지 땡거요. 매 간지 사거요. 매 세워들 팬 간대요. 그래서 그냥 시에 맞춰들 간대요. 그래서 강가 랍자 요로 와. 나사지만.
And also the talking about the medicines, what kind of medicines there are, what are the benefits, what are the the rules of taking medicines, when you should take it, when you shouldn't take it, and whether you should take it before meal, after meal, and so forth. So those are the rules, right?
다 태어나시게 아니 잡송을 배 열어서 이나야 다내 랍자도 나고 다좀 고다서 되는 거
So you have to follow the rules of that medicine. If you don't, then again, you will. The medicine will not be that effective. Just like that. And then it talks about the benefits of the refuge, taking refuge. And then after taking refuge, once you have taken refuge, then you have to do these things. You shouldn't do this, you should do that. Those are the precepts, the rules, to follow to make that practice of taking refuge effective.
Right? Now we love for ourselves very, very much, right? No one loves how we love
Oneself.
Oneself, is correct? No one loves how we love us. Usually for us, very important our body, right? The doctor said, oh, you have to cut this, take out, otherwise it's a big problem. Then we just keep. Usually we don't want people can maybe touch our body. Doctor can put the needles, we say, oh, okay, doctor, thank you, right? We love food very, very much. Whatever doctors, we have something that's sick or something, then whatever the doctor say, we listen, right? Usually we are very, very, we call take care of our body or protect our body. We don't want people can see. When doctors say, whatever they say, we listen. Like that. Therefore, I have to say that. If we very, very like for us, we have to very, very follow the Buddha's advice. If very, very we wish to free all the sufferings, we have to really follow the Buddha's advice. Usually we don't say Buddha said that. You guys say, I never heard people say, oh, Buddha said that, we cannot do that, Buddha said that. Something people can maybe say unhappy word, or something you're doing, then someone say, you're doing wrong with that, then everybody say, oh, he or she told me that. You take it the negative way. We don't always, Buddha said, teacher said that, people doesn't say that. We always, if something said, we call push the you falls, or you pound you, put your buttons, then always we say, oh, she told me that. Why? Why that? A lot of reasons. If you give the reason like that, oh, Buddha said that, teacher said that, I cannot do that, I cannot think that, I cannot do the actions, because Buddha said that, it's best way. But we don't say this way. We listen teaching all the time, we study all the time, but we might always go to wrong direction, whatever we want. Usually I say, before you study Buddhism until now, check your mind. How much you change? Before you very short temper, is correct? If people can say something, you very easily get angry. People, looking something, you very get angry. Now, how much? Depends you change. If you study many years, maybe, you also try to a lot of practice, but how much you change? If it doesn't change anything, maybe you recite the mantra maybe 100 million. You don't change anything in your mind. So of course you have the benefit you study, you also pray, but the main purpose, goal is change a little bit our mind. It's always very important, a little bit example our mind. Usually we don't always say, when we teach here, we say, oh, this is just general Buddhism talk. Right? Anger is bad, attachment is bad, jealousy is bad, Just, oh yeah, this is Buddhism say, yeah, no, Buddhism say Buddhism. Not like that. If I'm that person, I'm a lot jealous, I have a lot of attachment, I'm very angry all the time. If you that, then put a little bit of water every day. Slowly. It's not easy. If you love yourself, follow what daughters, it was you follow your daughter, like this, you follow the Buddha's advice, then you will be free from all the sufferings quickly. Okay. Now, that's what
So whether one will have a pure refuge or not, depends on how strongly one has created the cause of taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. So in this text known as the melodious laughter of Losong, it says the nature of the true nature of taking refuge. Taking refuge because one is most afraid, and because one knows the three jewels are able to protect. That is what you meant, condition one. And so if one has a fear towards the sufferings of the lower realm, and then believe that Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha has the power to protect us from those sufferings, and with that, then we take refuge, then that becomes the pure refuge. So we have already talked about the sufferings, of the lower realms, right? So then we have to think about those sufferings, in order to develop that fear towards the sufferings of the lower realms.
그러와 드레다 아니 쇼주 친구는 소리서 봐 간제다 나도 단다 당도 대외 냠 세워서 나도 대외 냠 이는데 얘네 보셔라 요 말에 그래서
And so if we don't know about those sufferings, then we will not be thinking about those and we will not have the fear towards those sufferings. So that's why it's explained before, right? Before talking about the refuge. And then the also not only that, not only the sufferings in the lower realm, but there's also a lot of sufferings in the upper realm. Like we have all kinds of sufferings. And even the happiness that we have, is actually in the nature of suffering. And so because he said the happiness that we have, it doesn't last forever. It doesn't stay as a happiness forever.
아니 배나 단대 가서 대화도 가능해서는 만나 제단 세모 만나 들어나서 아니 세모다 저도 난 내일도 만나더니 요하면 넣었어. 간데 로메사 들리나 아니 뉴슈기 군다데 다 다와치가 다 나고 체조도 말해서 로메사가 사실은 이 말이나 아니 대 군다라야 다 죽다 차와 따로지네 로직인도 왔더니 로도 이름을 되게 말해봤어. 디가 로 용은 때 통으로 봐. 대치 밤만 시간 도시라 내가 두요 말해 송을했어.
그래서 지다.
저다 로 세모만 얼렁트다로
아니.
다 뉴슈기 군다.
말은 진짜 지도 가래.
대치 말해서 근데 인자 대 산지긴 티까지 가로 다 개원이 주니라 따와서 봐. 대제 산지에서는 블루드 다 가셔. 다 산지 전화라 때니 당간돌라 되게 대 단다 대외기 계획이 대화 뇨하게 아니 가로 달로도 다는 때 쇼마레스 대리인자 다 대들라나네 개와 주주나 가듯이 제거해서 개와 주주나 따서로
So the happiness that we experience, is very short, compared to the length of time that we exist in this cycle existence. So it's like the lightning, in the sky. So if there's if there's a whitewashed house, right, and then in the completely dark, you can't see anything, and so here there's lights all over the places, so you don't experience that darkness, like completely dark, completely darkness. But in the places like in the mountains or in the forest, especially on the day, on the last day of the lunar calendar. There's the moon is completely gone, right? So there's no moonlight at all. That time is like it's completely dark, and so during that time when you have the lightning, so from the light of the lightning you can see that house for a very short moment. For the short moment you can see the house. So the happiness we experience is similar to that. That's how short it is, but even that happiness that we have is also the result of the virtuous actions that we have created. And so so whatever amount of virtuous action that we can create, we should create it, even if the result is so short.
그러와 개와 냠주니라든 가서 개와 들어나 거기나 또 춘슈만 가도 더 말해서 디바세도 신도 또 치모만도 더 그래서 송으로 들어와.
And so in terms of creating the virtuous actions, no matter how small it is, you should create it. In terms of creating the negative actions, you should abandon it, no matter how small it is. So the negative, the positive actions that we try to create usually tend to be very small. So even if it's very small, we should, create as much as possible.
그러와 안에 가래 로이 쇼지랑 뭐 양송을 했다. 띵담이 빈 코와는 연전은 남만해서 코와서야지 다 띵이든 다 지는 명이 연전을 사서 사서 집발해서 대란 내적이 아니 왕이 아니 가로 단 내자가 쇠서는 가지 가로 단 내자시다 뜨먹고 왕는 전에 다 추스리 가네 당가도 사서 와로 세사와 그래 추스가 사로치기 와로 가지 가서 사자 치기나 염전을 침보로 사와이나 추스리는 주사라고 말다 그 사로 와로 왔어 버튼 로차 되레스
And so just like Dignaga said that in samsara we are fallen into like a sea. It's a very deep sea where there's no limit to its extent. So it's you can't reach its depth. So if you fall into that sea, there's always risk of being eaten by the sea monsters, sea animals, right, living in the sea, crocodiles and so forth. So it's going to be eaten by that, right? So just like that, when we fall in the cycle existence, no matter where we are, we will always be inflicted by all these 4 kinds of sufferings.
다 데리는 샤도 다 니마 데리는 간도 소문다 산지 그 주게 되게 주겠다 자도 그 라자 년게 인생으로 소문을
And so therefore, in order to be protected from these sufferings in the cycle existence, in the oceans of cycle existence, one should take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and carry out all these advices and precepts of taking refuge in the 3 jewels.
그러다 내차 샤다 뜨무고 정말 제와이나 띵타 매백이 jansun나 싸워도 직발에 해서
So if we follow the delusions like attachment, anger, ignorance, then we'll be falling into the into the cycle, into the ocean of cycle existence.
jansu che보다 남도 che보다 사는 다난 얘기만 더 하는
And so the depth of the ocean is ocean is like endless depth. You cannot get to the end where you can find things. Like, just like recently you have heard about a plane that fell into the ocean, but they couldn't find it. So where it is gone, and so it must be gone in very, very deep part where you cannot find it at all.
어디에서 간제 내차 샤다 뜨무 뒤 영화 제와이나 다 가지는 고발을 내 되그래서 근데나 다 jansun나 사는 최생각 가는 마다 직발에서 가지 산도 그래서 최생.
And so if we follow these delusions like attachment, anger, ignorance, and so forth, then we'll fall into that sea of into the ocean of cycle existence, and will be eaten by one of the sea monsters.
어디에다 시 라닝 고아당에서 그 동안에 인직바당 아니 인직이 잡아서 내가 집에 니바 괜찮으라 집에 이치니데 다 정이래 다 대정한도 상관없는 다고 그래서.
And so that kind of fear we should develop towards the sufferings of the lower realm, particularly, and generally the sufferings of the cycle existence. and then believe that Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha has the power to protect us from these sufferings. So when we have these 2 causes, then we will take refuge. And whether we have these causes or not, we can check it ourselves.
그래서 나는 가진 좀 가진 고아당에서 동안 지거든나 대만주나 점수들로 제가 말했어.
So why do we have to be afraid of these sufferings? Because if we don't have that fear, then we will not, have the desire to be free from them, right?
아니 저도 좀 시발라서 안에 가로 샘체널란들에서 랑게 된다. 물론데야 많이나 저기도 나가는데서 대니 샘발 봐서도 막 간지 소소 누가 나가여서 대성 당고 그러더라.
What is?
샘체도 안 남나.
The call it.
쇼진아요.
This is saying that someone said that.
말 간지 다 가로 간지 동아를 싸워 있는 담보 소중 고지는 싸버렸어. 소유지는 맞으면은 샘지 시행 동안 단들로 제가 말했어요.
So you have to think about those sufferings that you may experience, right? In the future, if you don't think about your own suffering, you will not be able to think about others' suffering, and you will not be able to think about helping others to free from their sufferings.
어디 들에서 아니 고아당에서 온 지식 답을로도 제나 다 텔레 줘야 잡더니 타야 되는 뇌에서 잡서그러 와서.
So if we think about those sufferings, then we will, and then we, when we think about those sufferings, and when we develop the wish to be free from those sufferings, then we will, see whether there's a way to be free from those sufferings or not, right?
어디다 다 들리 잡지라도 수도 이치에서 면은 더 봐는 거 잡. 제가 말아봤어.
And in order to, take refuge, to find out whether somebody will be able to protect us or not, depends whether we believe in that person or not, right? So somebody who we believe in, who will be able to protect us, and then if we believe in that person or that object, then we'll take refuge in that, right?
어딘지는 또 와서 대문장도 논다 먹으면 돼. 등알이 지식 잡으면 잡순도 일로 맞지. 등알은 지금 제 잡순로 제가 말했어. 자연에 이치면은 대라 짜서 템바 안에 ten장 특삼래 니네 로만 다 가지 로케 말했어요.
And so that's what it says, right? So here, if we do not have both these causes, we will not take refuge purely. If we do not fear the suffering, we will not think of seeking a refuge. If we do not believe in the object of refuge, we will not remember our reliance on it as our refuge. or we might recall it, but only in words.
What is that? Oh, running coale, jibada. Running jiban coale and jiba, Jang coale, now maybe Nita some rumage chungoda. Drink chimbo suzu, jambu, giant, condo, Nazonga Duman Jipa, Japan, and come the general.
And so for the three different scopes, there are three different kind of fears. So for the small scope, it is the fear towards the sufferings of the lower realm. For the medium scope, it is the fear towards the sufferings of the cycle existence. It's all for oneself, right? So one's own suffering in the cycle existence. And then for the great scope, it is the fear of the sufferings towards sufferings within others, out of great compassion and love. They feel they cannot stand, or cannot bear to see others suffering. So wanting them, to be free from those sufferings. And for that, then you take refuge. So we have already talked a lot about the sufferings that the cycle existence and suffering of the three lower realms, right? And so by thinking about those sufferings, then we should develop this strong sense of fear towards the sufferings of the cycle existence, and particularly the suffering of the lower realms. And now by understanding the qualities of the object of refuge, then we should develop a strong belief in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha that they have the power to protect us from those sufferings.
Okay? I think now we stop here. Kanji, that jamru jenny de susu, and jilla yondo mayong, and tikola sama yawatan, which is.
And so now try to see whether you will be able to develop these two causes of taking refuge in the three jewels in your mind stream or not. So anyway, we are afraid of those sufferings that we don't want to experience, right? So those undesirable sufferings that we may or are experiencing come from where? Come from our own negative karmas, right?
What is that? Jenny tell us something, Tanisode, Susu chick, Lima, yes, Sumka, Numumisha, the Majawa,
So by thinking about those reasons, then it is very important for one to be anxious about our body, speech, and mind not engaging in non-virtuous actions.
Okay, let me stop there. Then we have any questions? Questions and answers? Yes.
I have a question. If we can go back and talk about causes and conditions of impermanence for a second.
Okay.
So I want to ask a question I've been thinking about Buddha nature. My understanding is that my Buddha nature has been in existence forever, and it will be in existence in the future forever. Therefore, it didn't come into existence based on causes and conditions. And it doesn't change, because the analogies that I've heard to explain Buddha nature, Buddha nature is like the sky, it's always there. The delusions are covering it over. Or the other analogy is the mirror with dust on it. The mirror is always there, but the dust can cover it. So my question is my Buddha nature, does it have independent existence? Or is it impermanent phenomena?
그래, 나 상계랑시? 그래, 상계랑시라. 달라.
Buddha nation.
상계랑시래. 상계랑시 다 소소 가서 줄여 열었어. 당연히 다 가든 열었으면 다 제야죠 말하고 가든 딱 버리시 여 봐라. 딱 버리시면 다 되든 총을 되든 딱 고소해서 여 말아. 데뷔값으로 가든 여 버려야 돼. 뭐 먹어서 가든 여 버렸어. 아니 다 거기서 뭐라는 게 빼들라 빼나 상계기 다 릭디 상계랑시 상계릭다 먼저 가서 빼샤든 거기는 남관항시 빼샤가 남관항시래서 안티라드네 로보드 티마티마드 다 띵기다 가바나치는 데 갑그레스 야미나데 멜론 가서도 멜론 가려고 탈라나시래서 탈라나시 데레스스 다 다가도 그 멜랑코 랑실에 쉬어 말아 거란다 내가 갑이어도 그파 장모서 쇼라 되나서 되는 상황도 그래서 또 뭐라 뒤어뒤 되는 가서 가래 상계 가서 상계 리디 가래 딱 버려버렸어 미딱 버렸어 그러니까 상계 리디 랑으로 버려버렸어 그딱 버려 거기서 여버렸어 그 줄게 딱 뜨고 말았어
산지 리세다 나도 관계자 산지 리세다 나도 가다 관계자 요래서 나도 가사 셈 녀모도 채워야다 텔라 녀모도 마치 리세지 텔라 때네 샤샤고 요래서 이제 산지 리세디 나도 가로 그런 도시잖아 산지 리세디 고 답에서 넣어 산지 랑시 세대 못돼 저러 로지 토마다 가로 랑시 토마다 되게 찾라 산지 리 아니 랑시 네
그 누버여 버더라. 이런 게 누버더라.
누버더라.
네.
근데자 간지 나로서 차상질라 요래서 까지 요한테 간지다 샘 용모도 찌바인자 녀모도 마치바지 요한테 설다 고 땡겨 왔어. 내가 간지 라면 좀 말했어. 녀모도 찌비 아니 다 랑시 되는 tel라 녀모도 찌비가 샘스가 tel라 때네 녀모도 마치비가 다 니바스가 르스가 되 샤게 그래서 같이 때는 샤워했어. 아니 레글라다 그냥 봐 되고는 못 보셔요. 라지 인들서 gen지르세요. 라지 이르세다 간지 샘 녀모도 트래픽 차들라 라지 이르세. 아니 데이터 그때 요요로 샘 녀모도 나도 마타워는 트래픽 차들고 요요로. 다들 gen지를 세대 아니 gen지를 세대 아니다 대지를 못 봐버렸어. 간지 랑지를 세대 너도 conna잖아. 다 봐버려 차들. 산지가 가래 샘 녀모도 다 차들라 랑지를 세로. 뭐데. 로지 토마토 리치다 안 랑지 토마토 리니셔로. 내가 랑지 토마토다 그냥 못돼. 샘 녀모도 다 차대.
다 소설 뜨고 와라. 소설 맨날 소설 줄로 된 상계를 용서요 말아.
두점 되는다 소소 때와지 소소지 샘 녀모 집어도 때와지 때와다 다 랑지도 트래블이 요래서 그쪽에 완다 간지 그쪽에 또 말해서 아라면 좀 말해서
So your Buddha nature, right? Depends on you. Yeah, no, we want to talk about your Buddha nature. Not just your Buddha nature, Kim's Buddha nature. Will it be there if Kim is not there?
Yes.
Will it still be there?
Yeah, Kim is just a label that's...
Yeah. Of course, that's labeled. Everything's labeled, right? So if Kim is not there, will the Buddha nature of Kim will be there? No, right? So Kim's Buddha nature depends on Kim.
Yes.
Yes. So it's not independent. Right? So here, an example, right? So of course it's debatable, we can have a lot of doubts and arguments, debates about that. But it's true, right? So, the Buddha nature, your Buddha nature depends on you. Right? Without you, there cannot be your Buddha nature, right? So that dependence is already proved that it is not independent. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, and it's not permanent. That's the potential, right? So the potential. So you can say, yes, it was there since beginningless time in the past. So when you become Buddha, do you still have Buddha nature? The potential to, Buddha nature means the potential to become Buddha, right?
Okay, yeah.
Potential to become Buddha ceases when you become Buddha, right? The potential, you don't say it's no longer there, but it's not required anymore, right? You're already Buddha, why do you need a potential to become Buddha, right? When you have the result, the cause ceases, right? The cause is ceased when the result is. So it will not ever.
cup the matter with the cup the minute, cup the matter the main was, cup the shower.
So even though the emptiness of such and such, we call it is a prominent, right? Emptiness of such and such is prominent. That's the cessation. The cessation is a prominent. We say cessation is prominent. So this book, being empty of inherent existence, is a cessation, right? So when the books empty of being inherent existence is a cessation, is the prominent. But if there's no book, would there be empty of inherent existence of the book? No, right? So that depends on the book. Right? And so it, you can say it perishes. And it's not really perishing, but it's not perishing moment by moment, but it can become non-existent. Right? It can become non-existent. It can change, right? From being there to not being there at all. Right? So it changes, right? It changes in that sense. So even if it is not permanent, even if it's permanent, it can still disappear. So in the example of the cup, the empty, we say the empty, the space, right? That's empty is permanent. Empty is empty all the time, right? It doesn't change. Empty is empty all the time. The empty inside the cup goes away when there's no cup, right? If the cup is broken, that empty inside the cup is gone also. So what happened to that space inside the cup? Does it disintegrate? No, right? It's gone with the cup.
Stops existing.
Yes, so it's gone with the cup.
So
that's anyway. So that's the dependent, right? Dependency. It depends on the cup.
same say same say that 저마다 다 점에 라지도 쉬어 말하려고 해서 그냥 둘로 잡아 전부 요하나 아니 둘로데 코라 라지도 쉬어 말아서 다 잡아데 둘을 반자서 말아서 근데 주요요 어떻게 지 말해서 먼저 샘이 라지 뭐니 다 요 말해 내자 말해 세다마 뜸 말해 얘는 내자 세다 뜸 섬데 원체니 다 샘마 값서 그나 가지고 이제 요 그런 요거 바뀌는 거로.
So the example that you are talking about, I don't know if you can call that a Buddha nature. It's usually we call about the mind. So the nature of the mind is clear, but it's obscured, temporarily obscured by delusions like that. So that's what we talk about. So just like the dirt is not, the part of the cloth, it's not in the nature of the cloth. If it's in the nature of the part of the cloth, then it should be there all the time, right? So the fact that it can be removed or cleaned shows that it's not in the nature of the cloth. And so just like that, the delusions, the obstructions are not in the nature of the mind. It's not one with the mind, not in the nature of the mind. If it is, then it will never be able to remove it. And so the fact that it can be removed from the mind and then mind can become fully enlightened shows that it's just a temporary there. So that's usually the example, that usually applies, to the mind, to the consciousness.
아니, 너도 세워 나본다. 세워 나보. 되게 라지라 그런 나보에다 코 가서 주나 아니 다해 말에 고사님아 주시는 거만 라로 그러고 매도 그러고.
So the charcoal, its nature is black, right? So no matter how much you wash, how much you rub, it will still be black, right? Because this is nature. But the cloth, the dirt on the cloth is not like that. When you wash it, it can be removed.
걔도 지금 다 가지고 아주 샘게 라지 써야 되는 거네. 샘게 다 라지 차디 간 요모 라지 쇼요 말이야. 다 요모도 쇼 치에 자니 다 코라지 라마 매완다고 제네. 요모도 가르치지로 자대 그래서.
Yeah, so even though the delusions are not in the nature of our mind, but it is so, because of it being very strong and thick in our mind, it feels like the mind is under its own control, So mind kind of follows whatever the delusion makes it to do. And so each time we think about, some kind of object, we develop delusion according, depending on each object that we develop, we think in our mind. So it develops, right? So it's not there all the time. It develops by depending on condition, cause and conditions. For example, like the person that you hate, encountering with that person, you develop anger, right? So before encountering with that person, you didn't have that anger, but that anger came later, right? So it wasn't there from before, from the beginning, just like the mind. It's not like that, not like the mind, which was there from the beginning, beginningless. The anger wasn't there all the time. It developed. It manifested. Yeah. It manifested, fasted in your mind by depending on the condition that you encounter.
그래서 다 데리간 조직 가사 주소 못 치는 시험에 왔지. 다 데리 도보통 싸워 있잖아. 데려 잡아대. 데리 싸워 있지.
And then same with the person that you develop, intimacy with, right? So the intimacy, the attachment that you develop to a person is also new. It wasn't there from the beginning. It wasn't there before you met the person. After you met the person, after you come to know, you fall in love and so forth, and then you develop that attachment.
데리자 다들 데리제슈를 가서나 만주 셈나 가디나 내 자체도 좀 너무 검대야자 다 예를 들면 제추 야 랑추종으로 여러 봤어.
But we have that potential, right? We had the imprint, the potential, the imprint in our mind, and therefore it is very easy to develop every time we meet with the condition.
Okay. 그래서 I've always attachment, maybe attachments, permanent. I'm angry, it's not permanent, not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when the objects conditions come in, then just put. Okay, then. Okay.
So if the Buddha nature is impermanent, it gives rise to something permanent, such as enlightenment.
Who said enlightenment is permanent?
Like you said, a shirt that you remove the stains you can wash. It's not that the shirt never was that color, it's just the stains that made it not. It was never not in its own nature.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like when we say that, like the example of a seed that we water and then it ripens into a flower,
Mm-hmm.
that seed, it turns into a flower, it's a product. It
Mm-hmm.
makes it seem as though the Buddhahood is a product.
Yes.
And then therefore it would be impermanent.
그럼 상기 고반데 믿어봐라. 상기 고반데 믿어봐 샤고라스. 강한선에 그다 대부인서 그 믿어봐 샤고라스.
다 텔레야 저 뭐 이러세요. 무슨 들 할까지. 아니 지난 상지에 상지 공부하나요? 그 못하고 자는 그래서. 거기를 시 상지 공부해야 돼. 다만 좀 전이 받을랬나? 아니 답아야 돼라고 그랬어. 아니 강사 소소 상지에 공부한테 못 답아랬어. 아니 강사 다시 좀 전이 그래 밖에 나오지. 대전에 가는 거 그랬어.
인다 가르잖아.
그런다.
지단 가서 질 상기 고반데 답아 있는 연세.
시 상지 공부한테다 그래다 이제요 말으로 가지. 아니 시 상지 공부하다 답아도 못
답장 말해서 질 상기 고반데.
다 그래 시 상지 공부하다 아니 답아도 못 하고 이게 차이 완자 아니 답아래서 그걸 합시하고 그러. 아니 그냥 못돼. 다 상지 공부하래. 아니 상지에 답이 차이자 또 답아들라고 여러 봤어. 다들 테니벨을 반도다는 그랬어.
아니 소소 답아 상기 고반데.
다 상지 소소 가면 상지에 소소 사 마지막에 도와면서 한다데 무슨 뭐 답을 합쳐 그랬어.
근데 소소상기 고반 답아 고반 상기 들었더니 답이 차이라네.
대란은 다 소소 사지고 상지 마지 못 답아 샤죠 그랬어. 반도다.
뭐 가전에 리포트 보라 소소상기 고반들라 답이 차이여서 그 답아 샤나. 그 답을 듣다 그 답이 차이여서 그 답아 샤거라. 거다 여바 인자다 거 딱바라면 답았잖아. 거 딱바 차이여서 그 답았어.
대샤가 말되니까
되니까
내가 저런데까지 수단 산지 공부도 답아래스. 아니 대라 담다 차는 답아래스. 다 산지
근데도 되는 것도 배는 뭐니고도 답아라. 뭐니고 답았다. 뭐니고도 가서 냠래 채버려 되는 뭐니 토고라. 이제 토바라다. 거 냠래 줄라 되는 거 토바라. this 거 대부 말해봤어. 대부는 거 믿어 봐서 말해봤어. 됐습니다.
어두 샤워 말했을까지. 야 제가 듣는 데부터 통도 가는 그래 말했을까지. 제 샤워는 제 샤워는 더 말했을까지. 대주 대당 때까지 르바던데 그런 semmo도 잡아인자 그때 있고 자성 가서 그래. 다 미다셔 가러 왔어. 뭐니 그때. 로 semmo도 잡아인자 대타에 다시더라고 뭐니 그때 받아셔 가러 왔어.
So usually, when we talk about things that exist, right? We can categorize everything that exists into permanent and impermanent, right? So it has to be either permanent or impermanent, right? So what do you say is the permanent versus impermanent. Yeah? So anything that has the permanent nature, or permanent part of part that's a permanent, then it's called permanent. So everything that exists is permanent or impermanent, right? What is existence itself?
Existence?
Existence itself, right? Everything that exists is either has to be permanent or impermanent, right? Existence itself is also existence, right? Existence itself exists. So existence itself is what? Is it permanent or impermanent? What is it? It's hard to say, all right? Hard to say what it is. But then there's the rules that is established in the debate that says so anything that has the nature of permanent, that has to be permanent. Because the existence has a part which is permanent, therefore existence itself is permanent. Right? So that's the reason. But is it really true or not? You can say the same thing about the impermanent, right? Because it has an impermanent nature, therefore it is impermanent. Why can't you say that? And why can you only say that? It doesn't have really a real answer for that, So anyway, so coming back to your question, so that's just to give you an example, right?
It makes sense when you say existence is permanent, because if it exists, it'll never become non-existent completely.
That's right, yeah. So anyway, in terms of the permanent, in enlightenment, also same thing, So very similar analogy used for that. It says, and in terms of general enlightenment and individual enlightenment. So the general enlightenment is permanent, but individual enlightenment is not permanent. But in the individual enlightenment also, you have the part which is a permanent, like the true body, the truth body, right? So among the four kind of bodies, we have the nature truth body, wisdom truth body, and then emanation body and the enjoyment body, right? So among those four bodies, the wisdom truth body is permanent, right? It's the cessation. So why is it cessation? So why is cessation permanent? Because cessation doesn't change. Cessation is cessation, right? When it's free of all those sufferings, free of the delusion, free of the suffering, it's freedom. It's free. It's there all the time. So then again, of course, it came from practicing, right? You practice that, and then you achieve that. When you achieve that, then the part that comes with that achievement is that you're free from those sufferings. So that is this part that comes with that, with that achievement. And so of course it came, you can say it came from that cause also, but it's not really that, not directly coming from that, and so the part became the cessation, is free from the suffering. Freedom from the suffering, the cessation of the suffering. So that's why that's called permanent.
Well, I look at the practice as a condition. It's not the main cause. The main cause of Buddhahood is Buddha nature, and then all the practices are the conditions.
Conditions, yes, yeah.
But when I think about enlightenment, it's a process of removal. Like the qualities are not being added to the mind. It's like when you develop bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness, these are combating those delusions. Like bodhicitta is combating against self-cherishing,
yes.
Emptiness is combating against ignorance. So the mind is not being increased, it's just everything is being removed from the mind to lead to enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
It seems that it's a process of removal. It's not that the qualities are being added to the mind. And then that would seem that the qualities are somehow separate from the mind's nature. So to me, it seems like it's almost as if the qualities had to have been there from beginningless time, because if they were developed through practice, it's something that was later on added.
Yeah. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
What others say? But 상계의 고방도도 그는 당에서 장주 쌤다 동료 도고 다 동도 비셔로 라래거라. 다 동료도 비셔로도 장주 쌤도 여여 버렸어 게만에. 다 디사도 겨 말했어. 게만에 여여 버렸어. 다 되게 다 상계 고방도도 그는 당에만 녀몬도서 야 표현은 녀몬도서 마 타와치도네. 녀몬도 마 타와치도네. 때네 상계 고방도 버렸어. 장주 쌤 깨네. 저는 배나간다 배나 현재적으로 깨네. 란전으로 돌아와 말했어. 사랑한지들이 현재적으로도 여어버렸어 게만에. 제가 기억 말했어. 배나 쌤도 그러잖아.
I think not like that. karena 샹주고 쌤들 야 제용 삼말아야 샹주고 쌤들 삼로 단 제거로 되는 거도 미어 말씀. 가지 이 거리나 이때는 태워서만 이때 돌로 제거도 되는 줄 봐요. 샹주고 쌤 대야 공내 반이 근데 쌤 제가도 많이 함도 그랬어.
So then you have to say the attachment to this let's say this table. Or no, not table. You won't be able to attach the table maybe, right? Or car. That's the attachment to a car. was there all the time?
To a particular car or just a
Oh yeah, particular car.
No,
Particular
that
car.
was there
Huh? That was there?
when you encountered the car, not it wasn't.
No, it wasn't there, right? Exactly. So, just like that, bodhicitta, how can you say it was there all the time?
Not bodhicitta.
Then what? But bodhicitta has to be developed, right? Bodhicitta has to be developed, right? It has to be developed later.
Exactly.
So it wasn't there before? So you were saying that all the positive minds were there from the beginning, less.
No,
Only when you remove the negative mind, then you become enlightened, right? By removing the negative minds, then you become enlightened.
yeah, the developing of bodhicitta came later, but what bodhicitta leads to.
But bodhicitta leads to like enlightenment was there from beginning?
Well, to me, when I think about it, if it's something that's added to the mind later.
No. So it doesn't mean it was there. It has the potential to develop that,
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that. You understand? The seed has the potential, but doesn't mean the flower is there all the time. And then when you clear the obstacle, then flower become obvious. It's not like that,
Yeah, the
The flower has to be developed later. So just like that, enlightenment has to be developed later.
So bodhicitta is just a condition. It's not really the main.
It's a cause and condition also, so you can say cause and condition. The main real cause for the enlightenment is bodhicitta.
To me, it sounds like it's still something that is just produced. It's hard to see it as permanent if it's something that's produced.
Oh, the Buddhahood?
Yeah.
So that's what we said earlier, right? That it's impermanent, it has impermanent, and so because if you talk about general, just like existence in general, in the existence there are impermanent things and permanent things. If you talk about the impermanent things, yes, they are impermanent. In the Buddhahood also there are things like permanent things, impermanent things, right? So in the Buddhahood, if you talk about the impermanent things in general, in particular, then of course you can say. But when you say Buddhahood in general, what is it? If you say it's impermanent, then what about this? You can't say, what about the permanent part? But if you say, oh yeah, it's permanent because it has the permanent part. Therefore you can say it's permanent. And there's reason there, But for the impermanence, there's no reason. That's why. So that's what I was talking earlier, at the beginning about the example of existence, permanent and impermanent things.
When you brought up general Buddhahood and then individual Buddhahood.
Individual Buddhahood, yes.
I never heard that, so that's something new.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Does that know what you
나
said?
실상이 고판다. 나는 결기 상이 고판이라서.
Yeah.
디디 공예만 고원용사.
You could say it's both.
There are a lot of things Peter you heard. It's nothing special for all of us.
You understand?
So Buddhahood is both.
Well, he said there are a lot of things that you haven't heard, so there's nothing to be surprised about what you have not heard.
No, it makes it
We all,
things up though.
Yeah.
It creates the potential for there being both.
Yep.
all of us have a lot of things we didn't know. We didn't heard this. Nothing special. Okay, thank you. Now we stop. Thank you very much.
Please turn to page 39 of the Kurukulla Center Prayer Book for Thanksgiving mandala offering. Saji perki juksing me tok tram ri rab ling ji ni de gien pa di sangi jing du mig te uwagi dro kun nam dag jing la chur pa shu jetsun lame kutse rab ten jing nama krin le chok chur ge pa dang lo sang ten pe drun me sa sum gi dro e mun sel tak tu neg yu chi Idam Guru Ratnam Mandalakam Niryatayami. Do Tsongkhapa's final lam-rim prayer. From my two collections, vast is space that I have amassed from working with effort at this practice for a great length of time, may I become the chief leading Buddha for all those whose mind's wisdom eye is blinded by ignorance. Even if I do not reach this state, may I be held in your loving compassion for all my lives, Manjushri. May I find the best of complete graded paths of the teachings, and may I please all the Buddhas by practicing. Using skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings with the points of the path as I have discerned them. May I uphold the Buddha's teachings for a very long time. with my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread, or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasure of happiness and aid. May the minds of those who wish for liberation be granted bounteous peace, and the Buddha's deeds be nourished for a long time, by even this graded course to enlightenment completed due to the wondrous virtuous conduct of the Buddhas and their children, human and non-human beings who eliminate adversity and make things conducive for practicing the excellent paths, never be parted in any of their lives from the purest path praised by the Buddhas. Whenever someone makes an effort to act in accordance with the tenfold Mahayana virtuous practices, may they always be assisted by the mighty ones, and may oceans of prosperity spread everywhere. The short, long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In that snow mountain encircled land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chen Rezig remain in life till samsara's end. A prayer that spontaneously fulfills all wishes. Tong yi ning je zung du juk pe lam che che sel ze gong chen ten drugun chag na pe mo tenzin gyatso la suwa deb so jedun lundru shu. Page 49, the short long life prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Top tsul chang jing jam gun gelwei tenzin kyong pelwei kunzo dog podze chok sum korwei legman tu drub pa dak sok dul je gundu jab ten shu. Okay, page 75, Meg Sema. Mig me tse we ter chen chen rezig dri me kien pe wang po jam pel yang gang chen ke pe tsu gen Tsongkhapa lo sang drag pe jab la suwa de. Thank you, Geshe-la.
Hi everyone, just a quick announcement. We have what's the musician?
Pempa, sorry?
Pempa.
Is it Pempa?
No.
No, the one from Pabongka.
No, yeah, no one can show. Yes.
No one can
He's
show.
coming here on July 11th and 12th of the year. Before that, he's going to be at Malarepa Center from July 4th. So we're seeing some flies, etc. coming out for that, but we just got that arranged this week. For the rest of the week is pretty much as it is. One ask, now that the sun is out and everything is nice and warm, if